Hi everybody, and welcome back to Kardec Radio for Teens. For those of you who might not know, Kardec Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. So last week we started off reading about the law of justice, love, and charity, and we started in the section about natural rights and justice. So we'll finish up that section and hopefully move on to another one this week. So let's pick up right where we left off at question 878. Is it possible for human beings to be deluded with respect to the boundaries of their rights? How do they know their true limits? So here what the question is asking is, can we be deluded? And deluded here means deceived or made to think something else. So can we be deceived that we only have these limits when we actually have other limits of our rights? So let's say, for an example, sometimes people in the past, let's say, they manipulated other people to believe that, oh yeah, slavery is a good thing. They somehow convinced these people and kind of were like, yeah, these are the rights, and the slaves had to believe that those were their rights. But so it wasn't that those were actually the rights of those people that were being slaves, but it was deceived to them that those were those rights to go through those conditions. But now we know that no, that wasn't their rights. They had more rights than what they had because they had almost no rights. Now we know how much rights they have, and we've grown so much in that area, and we can see. So now we see that those people who were slaves have much more rights. So their limits have grown. So when do we know what our actual limits are? Because what if right now we're kind of going through the same thing, that our limits are being repressed, our limits are being held back? So how are we going to know when we've reached our true limits of what our rights are? And the spirits answered, they can know their own limits by matching them to the limits of the rights that they have recognized for others, understanding for others, undergoing similar circumstances, and vice versa. So we can know our own limits by looking around us and seeing the examples everywhere. Of course, we know that every person is its own individual person, and everyone's going through their own things. And even though it might seem super similar, there are little differences in everyone's lives. But if we look at other people and we learn from their mistakes, and if we actually learn from it and take something away from those people's mistakes, we won't have to make those mistakes on our own. So, or if we learn others and see what they've done and see, oh, that's where my rights go, then we can learn from what other people do instead of just having to go through every single thing ourselves. We can look towards others for guidance and help. So here they're saying is that to know our true limits is to see everyone else and to see what everyone else's limits are, because in the end, we're all equal. So we're all going to have the same rights. So if all these people are only getting to that certain amount of rights, then that's the correct amount. And just comparing all the circumstances that are happening. So really being observant in what's happening around us and not only focusing on ourselves and on our own lives. Then there's a second part to this question, and it says, if individuals attribute the rights of others to themselves, what happens to subordination beneath superiors? Would this not result in complete anarchy of all powers? So here the question is asking, so if we attribute the rights to others to ourselves, so if we say, okay, if other people have this right, then I'm going to have this right, doesn't that mean, let's say if it was a king, if a king said, oh, if I have this right, everyone's going to have this right, or even vice versa, if the peasants if the king has that much right, then we all should have that much right. So then, in the end, everyone's going to be a king. So then what? What do we do then? So wouldn't this be a complete anarchy of all power for this king to say, oh, all of you have to be the same rights, or vice versa, or any of these situations? So they're saying, how can we get through this? And the spirits answered, natural rights are the same for everyone, from the smallest to the greatest. God has not sculpted some human beings for a better quality clay than others, and all are equal in God's eyes. These rights are eternal, while societal rights die with its institutions. Furthermore, people distinctly know their strengths or weaknesses, and will always be conscious of feeling a sort of deference to those individuals whose wisdom or virtue deserve respect. It is important so that those who think that they are superior know what duties give them a right to be admired. There will be no deficiency with authority is only granted to the superior wisdom. So again, what they were mentioning here is that everyone has the same amount of rights. We weren't created. God didn't say, okay, I'm going to create you out of the best material I have, the best clay I have, and I'm going to make this person out of the cheap clay. So let's think of if you get Play-Doh brand and then you get some knockoff brand. No, God doesn't sit there and make differences. We are all equal in God's eye, and that's the point of view that matters, because our natural rights are going to be the same for all of us forever. But of course, we know our societal rights that we've talked about a lot, they change as we go learning, as we go evolving. So of course, those are going to change as society is changing. But our natural rights and the rights that we have in our relationships with God and in God's eyes, those are equal for everyone, and they're consistent throughout. And another thing here that they mention is that it's important to also know why we were given some of the rights, because maybe we were needed to do some certain thing, or if we do have this high power, then what are we supposed to do with it? Why were we given this? Or we can think, sure, I have the right to be whatever I want to be when I grow up. I have the right to do anything I want to do, but I know my strengths and weaknesses. I know that for me, I can't go into being a doctor because one of my weaknesses is like body and blood and tissues and all that stuff. I can't deal with that stuff. So I know that that's a weakness for me. So knowing our strengths and weaknesses make us go into these different paths in life. So we have to also be aware that it's not just about, oh, why was that person given this? We know we're going through trials that we have to overcome. And there's reasons that we're going through the certain things that we are going through. But in God's eyes and in the natural laws, we all have the same rights. Question 879. What would be the character of those who practice justice in all of its purity? So here they're saying, so people who are just all the time, who are always following the rules, always following the rights, what would characterize people who practice all of justice? And the spirits answered, that of true justice, following the example of Jesus, because they would love their neighbor and practice charity. Without these virtues, there can be no real justice. So someone who's always following the laws of justice and the rights that we have, we're following Jesus, because Jesus set those guidelines, because we need to love our neighbors and practice charity. And once we do that, we'll be practicing charity. We'll be practicing justice. But if we're not loving our neighbors and wanting equal rights for our neighbors, and if we're not practicing charity and helping others, then there can't be real justice. So we're following Jesus' example, and we hope to get to that point, that we will get to that point, but we can fasten our pace of how fast we're going to get there. If we're going to sit around and wait for something to happen when it won't, or if we're going to act upon it and try and do our best so that we can follow Jesus' example and evolve ourselves and better ourselves. So now we're on to the next section, and this section is still in the same chapter, but this section is the right of property, theft. So now we're not talking about just any laws or any rights, but we're talking about the laws that we have on our property or stealing something. Because if we had no rules of, okay, I bought this is mine, then we wouldn't have theft, we wouldn't have stealing things, because it would be up for grabs if we didn't have ownership amongst things. Question 880. What is the first natural right of human beings? So we're saying, okay, we have all these natural rights in God's laws. We have all these natural rights. So what is the first one? And the spirits answered, the right to live. Therefore, no one has the right to take the life of another, or do anything that may compromise the individual's existence. So our first natural right is the right to live, to be alive on this planet or any planet that or any world that we are reincarnating. To be alive is our first and most important natural right that we have. So when we're talking about theft, or even if we're talking about taking someone else's life, that is compromising the individual's existence. So that is taking away that person's right to live. So our most important right and our first right that we have in our natural rights is the right to live. Question 881. Does the right to live give people the right to hoard wealth so that they can rest when no longer able to work? So, the right to live. So our right that we have this right to stay alive, to live, and to live this life to the fullest. Does this give you the right to just say, oh, okay, I'm going to hold on to all this money so that when I can't work, I'm just going to sit around and do nothing. And I'm not going to work, and I'm just going to have all this money, and that's going to be it. I'm not going to do anything. So does that count in the right to live? To say, oh, I'm not going to work, but I'm still going to live? And the Spirit said, yes, but they should do this in collaboration with their family by honest labor, as bees do, not by accumulating wealth in selfish manner. Some animals serve as an example for this kind of foresight. So here they're saying, so people who retire, and most people these days, older people, they retire, and they're saying, yeah, that's right, as long as we're being honest in our work, as long as the money that's going for our retirement, our family earned by working properly and following the rules, not by some sneaky way that we accumulated all this money or we were being selfish with all this money, but that we fairly accumulated and we worked hard and just saved aside this money. Then yeah, we get to a point where our body can't do such physical actions and can't work as well. But so it is okay to have this retirement, even with the right to live. Yes, that a right to retire when our body can't really handle that anymore is correct, as long as we're doing the right things within that and accumulating the money well and spending it properly and all of that. Question 882. Do humans have the right to defend what they have accumulated with their work? So now it's saying, okay, so now with your work, say you went out, you worked, and then you bought yourself a new phone. So do you have the right to defend this phone that you just bought with your own money? And the spirits answered, it was God who said, thou shalt not steal. And Jesus who said, repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. So, and then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, what people have accumulated by honest labor is legitimate property that they are entitled to defend. The possession of property that is the fruit of work is a natural right, as sacred as the right to labor or the right to live. So here they're saying, so when we accumulate something with honest labor, then yeah, we have the right to defend it, to keep it as, to have it as ours and not have it stolen from us. So we have, like we said, we have the right to live. That's one of the first and most important rights that we have. But another right we have is the right to labor, the right to work. And again, we said that with this right to work, we know that it's okay to, when we reach the point where our body can't, it's okay to step back from that. But another right that we have is the right to possess this, to possess property that we worked for. So if you have your summer job and you earned all this money and you want to spend it on a new phone or new clothes or something, and you go out and you buy it and it's great and you love it, then yeah, then that's yours, and no one should steal from it, should steal it from you. And if they do, that would be wrong. And that's where it says, repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. So give it back, because that person earned it. But we know if you do it the wrong way, if you're stealing the money from someone or it's dishonest, then that's not going to end well. But if you honestly work for something, then yeah, you do have the right to possess it and to defend it, and to defend that it's yours. Question 883. Is the desire to own things natural? So here they're saying, so as humans, we know that we desire to own a lot of things. So like we're saying, we want a phone or new clothes or this and that. So we want all these things. So is this natural to want all these things, to desire our own things? And the spirits answered, yes, but when it is simply for yourself and for personal satisfaction, it is selfishness. So yes, it's natural for us to want to own things, own our own things. But we have to be careful in how we're doing it. If we just want to own something because we want it for ourselves and just for us to be happy and we're not thinking about anyone else, then we're being selfish. So we need to make sure that when we're thinking about our things that we want to buy or things that we have the desire to buy and to have, we need to make sure that, is it going to be good for someone else? Can I share this with someone else? Is there a better reason than just doing this for myself? And a lot of times that's really hard for us to think that, oh, I'm not going to get this because it's just for myself and that's selfish. No, it's really hard for us to think that way. So we just have to work on it, maybe one little thing at a time, think, oh, do I really need this, or can I do something differently that might help someone instead? So we can think about these little things and work on it little by little, because obviously we can't just stop buying everything because it's only for ourselves, because that would be too difficult for us. And that's why we're still here on earth going through these trials, because we haven't gotten that far yet. But little by little we can keep trying to be more self-aware and see, oh, am I only buying this just for myself for no other reason, just for me to be happy? Maybe let me think of something that can make me and my friend happy, or me and my family happy, or something like that. So in all these trials that we face, it's important to keep in mind that we have to work on the baby steps. We can't just jump right ahead and think we're going to be perfectly fine and do great and just pass the test and that's it. No, we should work on the baby steps and slowly learn the lessons, and then we'll be able to pass the test much more easy. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, is the desire to have possessions legitimate, since those who can support themselves are not a burden to others? So here they're saying, so is the desire to have things, is this a legit desire to have things? Because some people, because there's those who can support themselves and they have enough money to possess things. Like, let's say you have enough money to buy a house, so you have a house and that's it. So they're saying, is that okay? And the spirits answered, some people are greedy and accumulate wealth merely in order to satisfy their own passions, and without providing any benefit to anyone. Do you think that makes God happy? On the contrary, those who accumulate wealth by honest labor to help their fellow human beings practice the law of love and charity and receive God's blessings. So sometimes when we're thinking about it, okay, this person has money, so they bought a house. And sometimes it's not anything, sometimes it's not selfish, and sometimes they were just buying a house and they had money for it, so they bought this house. But they're still continuing to do other things now with this new house that they have. But some people just do it to be greedy. They just say, oh, I want to have the biggest house and the prettiest place and all these things, but it's only for themselves, and they're not thinking about anyone else. And when we're not thinking about anyone else, not only is that going to upset other people, but most of all, that's going to upset God. That's not going to make God happy if we are only thinking about ourselves and no one else. Instead, we want to, if we work hard and if we help one another and get a house as our family, and maybe not just go extravagant spending all this money, and maybe use the money for something else that we worked hard for. So we have to, a key thing that we keep seeing here repeating is that we have to think about others. And that's where that charity comes in, and love is that it's about thinking about other people's before ourselves. Love your neighbor as yourself. Care about the next person as much as yourself. And that's when we'll truly start to overcome these trials that we're facing. Question 884. What constitutes legitimate property? So what counts as actual property that you have? Like, is it food, or is it your house, or is it your clothes? What is it? And the spirits answered, no property is legitimate unless acquired without harming others. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, the law of love and justice forbid us to treat others in a manner that we do not want others to treat ourselves, condemns every means of obtaining property or wealth that would contradict that law. So, when having legitimate property, we need to think of the law and justice. So, your property is only legitimate property if it didn't harm anyone else. If no one else was harmed by you having that property in any sort of way, maybe if you getting that new phone, it's fine. You didn't brag in anyone's face, but what if you went and you bragged in your face that you had this new phone? Well, now you made that person feel bad because they don't have that, or someone accidentally bumped into it and you yelled at them because they bumped into it. So now this is causing negative things to yourself and to others. So now we're harming others. It's not so pure. So that's when that property isn't going to be legit. Legit property is going to be something that we have that is not harming anyone else. It never did harm anyone else, and it never will, and we'll try our best right now to not harm others with it. Because we have to remember that all these laws are working together. So even though we have the right of property and talking about the law of property, we also have the law of love and justice, that we need to be taking care of one another and looking out for one another. And if we're harming others, then we're breaking that law. So we're breaking this property one as well. Question 885. Is the right to property unlimited? So is the right to property unlimited? So if I work hard and I keep making money, can I just keep having lots and lots of property and lots of things? And the spirits answered, everything that has been legitimately acquired is property. However, as we said, since human laws are flawed, they frequently establish conventional rights that contradict natural justice. For this reason, society reforms its laws as progress is accomplished, and as it obtains a better notion for justice. What appears right in one century is barbarous in another. So here they're saying, so is the right to property unlimited? So here they're saying, so theoretically, yes, it's unlimited if everything you're getting is acquired without harming someone else. But of course we know that human laws are very flawed, and oftentimes they go against this justice. So there will be some sort of limit to it, or somehow our human laws kind of push us back from just having unlimited property. So, but of course we know that our human laws keep evolving. While our natural laws stay the same, the laws that God has established for us, those stay the same because those are like the ultimate ones, the ones that are perfect already. The ones that human laws come up with, they're subject to change all the time because they need improvement. So, theoretically, yes, we can have unlimited property, but our human laws don't really allow that to happen. And now we're on to the next section, which is about charity and loving your neighbor, which we already started talking a lot about today, so this is a great thing to go into from now. Question 886. What is the true meaning of the word charity as used by Jesus? So this is a quite simple question. So what is the true meaning of charity? The way Jesus uses it, what does he mean? And the spirits answered, benevolence for everyone, indulgence towards imperfections of others, and forgiveness of offenses. So right there, it's three little things. Three little things that are very hard to do for all of us. Benevolence for everyone. For everyone. So when they say neighbor, loving your neighbor, it's not actually just your neighbor, but it's your neighbors of the world. So everyone. All of our brothers and sisters on the whole entire world. Indulgence towards imperfections of others. So not seeing someone's imperfection and laughing at them or pointing their finger, but seeing it and learning from it and trying to help them and help ourselves from that. And forgiving of offenses. So not to hold a grudge on someone else and keep saying, oh, you did that, you did that, you did that. No, forgive that person for what they did. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in and he says, love and charity complement the law of justice, since loving your neighbor is to do them all the good in our power, all that we would wish that have been done to ourselves. This is the meaning behind Jesus' words, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So, while we think that justice might not go with love and charity, it does, because when we're looking at our rights, we look at it the same way we look at love and justice, that we want the same rights for others as we would want for ourselves. And the same as we want to treat others the way we want to be treated. Or we want to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And then Allan Kardec continues, according to Jesus, charity is not restricted to giving alms, but covers all our relations with our fellow human beings, whether inferior, equal, or superior. It preaches indulgence on our part because we need the same ourselves, and it forbids us from humiliating the unfortunate, as is too often done. How many of us lavish respect and attention of the rich, yet think that being civil to the poor is not worth the time or effort? Yet, the more deplorable the situation of the poor, the more painstaking we should refrain from adding humiliation to their misfortune. Those who are truly kind try to elevate others to their level by reducing the distance between them. So here, this was really a great paragraph with a lot of good things, good points. But another important one here that they're putting is that charity is not just to say, oh, I'm going to sit here and just donate this money and that's it. And then we say, oh, I'm rich and you're poor. And we're making that big distinction. And right there is bad, because we're not being kind to others. We're creating that separation between us when we know in justice and our rights that we're all equal. So we should keep ourselves at that equal treatment. So to truly practice charity and helping one another is to bring ourselves maybe down to that person's level or up to that person's level, and make that distance between us come closer and make it smaller so that we're not so far apart. We don't want to help someone and humiliate them and say, oh, here, I brought you this money because I know you don't have any. We don't want to humiliate people. We want to do it humbly and help people the way we would want to be helped. Would we want to be humiliated like that? So it's really the best way to go through this is in little situations. Try and put yourself in the other person's shoes. What if I was that person? What would I want to be done? And then do that. So that's a way that we can do that in our everyday lives, day to day, hour by hour. We can put ourselves in other people's shoes and see how they would feel and how we would feel if we were in their position, and see what we would want them to do. And that's how we'll find the best way that we should act in those situations. So that's where we'll leave off today. And next week we'll continue off talking more about charity, love, and justice. But before we leave off, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone for today's date, August 14th. The story of love. The story of love is not important. What is important is that one is capable of love. It is perhaps the only glimpse we have permitted of eternity. When we love someone, we can become our best selves. Of course, we want to be loved in return, and we want our love to last. But even when this doesn't happen, we know that we are better for having been able to love. If we can love once, we can love again. I am a person who can love. I grow each time I love. So hopefully we can take all these little messages that we've gotten throughout today's show and try and put that into our daily lives and try and fix things, not in big ginormous steps, but in little baby steps. Try and put yourself in other people's shoes, or try and do something kind for others instead of just something for yourself. And if everyone did a bunch of little things, the world would evolve so much. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to talk about at all, feel free to email me at cardiacradioforteens@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.